manager today. And I want to thank Betsy Schoten, my co-chair. And Betsy's going to be keeping an eye on the chat. And so if you do have any questions, please put them in the chat and we'll take them toward the end. Dr. Scott and I are going to do a little Q&A today. And many of you met her last, I guess it was about 2 weeks ago when we had the Women in Leadership event. But for those of you who did not attend that evening, I'm going to do a little, just a brief bio, if that's okay. Dr. Scott is an award-winning historian, author, and speaker. She earned her doctorate in history from the University of Chicago and was awarded a fellowship from the university's Board of Trustees. She received a master's degree with distinction from Southern Methodist University. Dr. Scott left her position as an associate professor of American history and chair of the Department of History at Hood College in Frederick, Maryland, to become director of the Institute for Common Power in 2022. During her tenure at Hood, Dr. Scott received numerous awards, including the college's highest commendation for professors, the Excellence in Teaching Award. She has also taught at the University of Maryland, where she currently teaches part-time, and the University of Washington, where she was nominated for a Distinguished Teaching Award and received the Outstanding University of Washington Woman Award. Dr. Scott's research interests focus largely on urban history, the intersection of sports and race, African-American social and cultural history, and political and social movements. She regularly lectures about race, sports, social movements, and voting rights at venues across the country. Dr. Scott believes an academic's role should extend beyond the classroom. To this end, she has been heavily involved in community service and activism. She currently serves on the board of the Maryland Lynching Project. Dr. Scott had helped lead the creation of a course on African American studies for high school students in Maryland's Frederick County public school system. And since serving as the director of the Institute for Common Power, she has spearheaded numerous programs, including the Truth and Purpose Learning Experience for Education, Scholars in Motion, and Family Voter Registration Drive. I am totally impressed by all the work that she does, and I welcome her with us today. So
thank you.
You are welcome. To get started, we have heard a little bit about your book, Lynching and Leisure, Race and the Transformation of Mob Violence in Texas. Bronwyn shared that information with us when she came back from the tour. And some of us viewed the related video of the lynching postcards. Can you tell us about your current project related to this work here in Maryland?
Yeah, thank you for a beautiful introduction, and thank you all for having me here, both 2 weeks ago and now here in this space. I really appreciate it. So I didn't know that some of you had seen the lynching documentary, so thank you for that as well. That was done by Stanley Nelson, and he actually has another documentary that, before I get to what I'm doing in Maryland, that I would strongly recommend to everybody, that came out in August. It is on Hulu, and it's called Sound of the Police. I'm in that one as well, which is not why I'm recommending it. I'm recommending it because it takes lynching and the concepts of race and policing, and it historicizes them. And so you can watch from the earliest police forces until today. It goes back and forth between the modern era and through history. It's beautifully done. And so I strongly recommend Sound of the Police. What I'm doing right now, as you mentioned, I serve on the board of the Maryland Lynching Memorial Project, and I've been on there for just over a year. And so we are doing a lot of work around truth and reconciliation and memorialization. And so the board itself ensures that local communities who are interested in having soil collections that will be sent to the Equal Justice Initiative in Montgomery for their Legacy Museum collection, as well as those who are interested in having markers to kind of claim accountability and recognize the victims of racial terror lynchings in the state. We oversee that and we help with that. The other thing that the board is doing right now, and actually just before I got on this call, I was finishing reading the script for it, is that we have been consulting with the Reginald Lewis Museum in downtown Baltimore for an upcoming exhibit on lynching in the state of Maryland. It also places it in historical context and looks at racial terror lynching around the country. And so the board has been working very closely with them in procuring that exhibit, curating that exhibit, and that should open, I believe, in August. And so that is underway.
That's great for us to know, because we have been talking as a group about visiting that museum.
Oh, nice.
And maybe we can put that on our calendar. Do you know how long, is it going to be a permanent exhibit?
Yes,
or-
it's supposed to be a permanent exhibit.
Okay, that's
Yeah.
wonderful.
Yeah, and I think they sent us the script today, so it's getting there. I think that they will make that August opening date.
Okay, that's really an exciting museum. And when you visit, they're sometimes they have just special events days also, and you never know what you're going to see. One day we went and we saw the I guess the black baseball players.
Oh yeah,
were there. Yeah,
That's really
that was
great.
great.
Yeah, I just discovered it. I before I was on the board, actually, I was a keynote speaker for one of their events, and that was the first time I'd been there because I came from Seattle, so I hadn't been here long. But what a gem in downtown Baltimore.
Definitely is. Betsy, you have a question for Dr. Scott?
No, I didn't at this moment, although I have not seen any in the chat.
Okay, you wanted to ask, I will go ahead then with the question about the voting.
Oh gosh, you're so right. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I won't give you my excuse for why that slipped my mind for the moment, but
all right.
Did, and I apologize. Yeah.
So
yes, go ahead, Sharon. You're going to say it better than I can at this point. It had something to do with what I had at lunch. So
that's right. Dr. Scott, you're the editor of a 2025 forthcoming book, Reclaiming Democracy, A History of Voter Suppression and a Handbook for Voting Justice. Mm-hmm. Can you tell us about your continuing work on voting rights?
Yeah, so that is essentially becoming an outgrowth of the work that we're doing at the Institute. So as you mentioned, I left Hood to become the director of the Institute for Common Power. We opened that organization in June of 2022. And so it is the educational branch of a voter mobilization organization that is based in Seattle called Common Power. And they have been around since 2017. One of the people who started that, Dr. David Domke, he and I were colleagues at the University of Washington. We started the Institute with an understanding that for people to really understand the importance of voting, to know how it is tied to everything in our current lives, then they really had to have an appreciation for and be immersed in the history. And so that's what the Institute does. And so I have a team of people around me, from professors to educators to logistics folks to marketing. We have all of that to make sure that we can put on workshops and lectures and take people on the Truth and Purpose learning tours, which I can talk to you about in just a moment. We have foundational courses. Dr. Hakeem Jeffries, who is the brother of minority speaker, Dr. Hassan Jeffries, who is Hakeem Jeffries' brother, works closely with us. He's teaching a course for us right now. You can still sign up if you want to. Very interactive, where it's just like this, and people can ask some questions, and he lectures. That's part of our foundational course series. If you sign up, which I would love for you to do for the newsletter, most of what we offer is free to the public. And coming in June, Nicole Hannah-Jones will be coming to the Institute for free. Oh. And it will be a Zoomed experience where you can ask her questions. We have Clint Smith coming to the Institute for Common Power. And so we just had Eric Foner. So it is these kinds of things. We have an organization called, it's a group called Scholars in Motion that is for youth who live in government subsidized housing, so that we can give them all of the tools, the mentoring, the tutoring, the SAT training that they need to get to college. And part of what we do is talk to them about civic education and history and register them to vote and all of the other things. We had our first cohort graduate last year. One of the young women said she didn't really think she was going to go to college. She received multiple merit and presidential scholarships after entering the program, and just texted me a month and a half ago because because she made the dean's list during her first semester. So that's another thing that we do. And that program was designed as us leading as an example. So we can talk to people about mobilizing voters. We can talk to people about the importance of voting because we know that the power of the vote enables us to dismantle injustice, to attack structural inequality. We also believe that we need to show you how to do that. And that's why we started a program like Scholars in Motion, to say that this is how we break the racial wealth gap. This is how we make sure that kids who are BIPOC kids, who are born and living in housing projects, have an avenue to higher education, because that higher education will impact all of their brethren and generations to come. So I just got back from Montgomery. You see, I have a lot to say about voting. I just got back from Montgomery on Sunday evening because I went there. So not only do I teach people, you have to walk the walk and talk the talk. So I knock on doors too. And I went with a group of some of our educators and a couple of our Scholars in Motion. And we knocked on just a small group, almost 600 doors, in support of Shamari Figures, who is a representative from the new district in Alabama that was born from the recent Supreme Court ruling, the Mulligan case. So we were knocking on doors to help get him through the primaries into the main election. And so the publication you mentioned is just kind of a small piece of the outgrowth of that, so that we can teach people, and it's going to be user-friendly from middle school until adulthood, the history of voting rights and voter repression and suppression and the future of voter empowerment.
That it is so important. You know, we have some a congressional race and a senatorial race here in Maryland, and you know, some of those could be close, and it's just so important that everybody gets out and votes.
Yeah.
I know it's a topic near and dear to my heart, and I'm sorry that I blanked for a moment.
That's no problem.
I was going to ask it, but Sharon said it beautifully, and I very much appreciate your answer.
This year, Betsy, I'm sharing Betsy with voting rights.
Oh, good.
Racial equity. I have to let her go some days.
Well, we're going to have a team in Maryland. We usually focus on battleground states, but this year we will be forming a team in Maryland. So I can certainly send information to you if anyone would like to come and knock on doors with us.
Yeah,
please do.
I see Tara's hand going up. That's wonderful.
Yeah, please do. Yes, yes.
And I can put a link in the chat. That would be great. And if you can't, we can send it around afterwards.
Yeah, we're still forming it. So I will have that probably in the next week for how people can sign up for Team Maryland.
Okay, and you can send that to me and I can share it with everybody in our group.
That sounds great. Thank you.
Okay, so this is my area of interest on my sideline. You are the editor of Seattle Sports. Sorry, the author, right?
Oh, the editor and
contributor. The editor of Seattle Sports, Play, Identity, and Pursuit in the Emerald City. You have a forthcoming book, Bed-Stuy to the Hall of Fame, The Unexpected Life of Lenny Wilkens, and you have an essay soon to be published, The 1968 Black Power Image and the Mexico City Olympics. What drew you to your research on the intersection of sports and race, and why is that important for all of us to recognize?
Absolutely. So, and I also one of the editors for the Journal of Sports History. So I'm all in with sports, just like I am with some other things. But well, first of all, I was always an athlete. Our whole family was. I was in track. I was recruited for D1, decided not to do it because I wanted to focus on school, but instead became a coach for high school. And so I coached for many years. I have 3 kids, one of whom ran track at NYU, and I was their coach in high school and when they were little. So when my husband played football, very big sports family. But what got me into the history of it, honestly, was when my brother passed away. He died in 2007. And when he passed away, he had played professional football. And he was 11 years older than me, kind of a father figure, became a businessman, just one of my heroes. And so I started to watch football more. I had grown up going to his games and hated it when I was little, but I started to really embrace it and sports itself, because in a way it allowed me to feel closer to him because it had been such a central part of his life. And at the same time, I was teaching and researching, and that led me into integrating those two things, sports and history. And then it continues and takes on kind of a life of its own. He was always one to say that athletes are so often placed in a particular box that people say, oh, athletes this, athletes that. And so the idea was to reclaim the humanity of people who are in sports so that they're not just a singular notion, so that their bodies are not just seen as one that is supposed to be for sports. And really what I love to focus on is the way that professional and college athletes use their platforms for social good and for change. And so I write a lot about that. Even in the book, when I'm writing about Lenny Wilkens, I did in the book that I edited that you mentioned, I have a contributing chapter in that too. And I talk about him as a civil rights activist. And in the book, I will talk about that as well. That's why I did the 1968 piece. I used to teach a course on the history of African Americans at sports, both at the University of Washington and at Hood College. And it is that to show that sports become a microcosm of macro social, political, and racial issues. It is not just about the entertainment on the field. And even students who took the class who hated sports took the class because of what it told us about society and because of what it taught us about the challenges that people went through and the pioneering efforts that they put forth and the changes that they were able to create.
Well, I can't wait I'm going to be looking for those when they appear. I think it's going to be so interesting and so exciting. And as you and I talked about, it's an Olympic year.
Yes.
So, you know, I'm excited for Paris and everything that will bring us.
Yeah, and the book, the one that has my chapter on the 1968 Black Power picture from Mexico City, is a book that is about iconic sports photography coming out of the University of Texas Press. So that comes out at the end of the year. So I'll drop you a little note when it's out.
That's perfect.
Okay.
Our colleagues Tara Clifford and Bronwyn Belling joined you on your Truth and Learning experience last fall. What do you have coming up in that area?
Right. So we do these Truth and Purpose learning experiences. They are led by me and my colleague, David Domke, who was the former professor I mentioned to, started Common Power. And he and I have both done varied iterations of them, for him for 10 years, 11 years now, me for about the last almost 8 years. But we did them separate from one another. They were a bit different. They were really all delving into the history, but we've shifted that. Since we've been working together in the last 2 years, what has become the immediate purpose of that is moving people from education to action. And so we really talk not just about the history, because we go through Georgia and Alabama, and then we have a graduated level where you go to Tennessee and Mississippi, and not just focusing on the modern civil rights movement and also the broader history of African Americans, which is all of our history. We also are talking about how that history is connected to today. So for instance, when we're talking about voting, we talk very much about the 2013 Shelby case that has gutted the 1965 Voting Rights Act. And then we talk about what it looks like on the ground. And then we talk about what you can do about it to try to fix it. And so in every aspect of what we do on the Truth and Purpose Learning Tours, truth and purpose are central. What are the truths that people are trying to mask right now around the country? How do we combat that? And how do you find your purpose in this, or solidify the purpose that you have? The ones that we have coming up next week, actually, next Wednesday, I leave for one with the Seattle Seahawks. And so this will be the second one that we're doing with the Seattle Seahawks, which I've always been a fan because we lived in Seattle, but now I really applaud them because they don't have to do this. They sought us out and went on a journey, and then now they come back, and we have gone and done lectures to their rookies. I've given their rookies literacy tests from 1965 and taught them about the history of voting. And so we really have a wonderful partnership with them. And then we are in the midst, I just had a meeting with my team earlier, because we have our Truth and Purpose learning experience for educators. The application closed last night at midnight. That is just my heart. I love this because I already love the Truth and Purpose learning experience. K through 12 educators can then take that into their classroom. Many of them the next day have 100 students. That means when we take 30 educators, they impact 3,000 students the day they get back, and then another 3,000, and then we add 30, and we're talking about tens of thousands of students, and it impacts them in these real, incredible, beautiful ways. Once they go on this journey, anything that we offer, even if it's a course that costs money, they get to go to for free. We have an educator symposium coming up that will teach both historical investigation and pedagogy in July. they get to go for free because they've already gone on it. And so we pay all expenses because educators are underpaid in this country. And so one of the things we'll launch a fundraiser actually with Nicole Hannah-Jones and Dr. Clint Smith. They're coming to help us raise money so we can send more educators on the Educator Learning Tour. And so we got a record number of almost 100 applicants last night. And sadly, we only have space for 31. That's the worst part when I have to tell people no, but we tell them to apply again so that because we really take that seriously. So those are the two journeys that I have coming up. We do have another one in early September that's open to the public. So if anyone would like to go on that journey, please get in contact with me and I can send you that information. And I think Tara can speak, and Bronwyn, I know she's not here, but can speak about that if you have any questions about the journey.
Well, I know that when they came back, they were very, very excited, and they were writing to me the day they got back about the educators program and how can we have Anne Arundel County included. And so I gave them some suggestions of people to contact. But then when you and I talked last week, I also, went to my contact and sent information to her. So
Wonderful.
I don't know whether you heard from anybody from Anne Arundel County, but
check, yeah.
But I'm gonna stay on it with them.
Okay.
Remind them that they can, continue to look at your website, because I know that we have educators in our school system that would love to participate in this.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I can think of some of them right away. And I have to say, Dr. Terry, that you are my hero. Honestly, because you are an educator and an activist.
Thank you.
And it's just wonderful. And we're so glad that you're with us today.
Thank
you. Betsy, I know there's a few questions in the chat.
Yes. Eileen said, can you talk more about the public event in the fall?
Yes, so that is our, well, as far as public events, I can send you, so anybody who would like to be in our newsletter, please go to our website. I can actually drop that in the chat right now. And so the website has information on all of our events. It tells you how to join our newsletter, which is the best thing to do to keep abreast of everything. We're going to be sending out another newsletter. Let me just put this in here.
And while she's doing that, I just want to say, in addition to Bronwyn and myself, Elaine Bachman, with whom Dr. Terry was in conversation with Chanel Compton-Johnson, Elaine also was on the tour last fall.
She was, that's right. It was really a wonderful group of people. I was just talking about it today, actually, when we had lunch outside in Atlanta to someone. So yeah, it was lovely. And so that event, if you go to our website, then you can go to the top and there's one that says Truth and Purpose Learning Experiences. So you can find links to them. The one in September, we're taking applicants for, people can register for it right now. It is open to the public. I asked you to join our newsletter because all information related to those things will come out in the newsletter, including how you can sign up for Nicole Hannah-Jones, for Clint Smith, for all of the other things that we do.
Wonderful. Okay, so there's one question here that I can actually answer. Is Common Power connected to Power the Vote? I believe the answer to that is no, but we need both organizations. Power the Vote is about making sure every vote counts. So that's after the fact, but they put protection staffs in the key states.
That's right, we can work in concert with one another.
Yeah, absolutely. And another question is, how do you refer a student to Scholars in Motion? Same thing through the website, or?
No, that would be contact me. So that is terry@commonpower.org. And so we have two chapters right now, one that is in Frederick County, but if somebody is not far off, we would be happy to roll them into our Frederick County chapter, and one in Selma, Alabama. So those are our two current chapters. We have what is a growing structure of certified teachers who are their mentors. I also have college students, very successful college students as their mentors and tutors. We have our SAT coach. They go on monthly field trips to create community. We go to museums and to, we were just invited to the Department of Justice by one of the attorneys there who took them around last year. And we go on college visits and we cover the costs of registering them for SAT. We put down payments for their college. We do everything that they need to make sure that they can. We even, just yesterday, I was on the phone with the admissions office of one of the schools that one of the students got into to make sure that they received the highest amount of scholarship that they can. So we really do all that we can to usher them through. Then once they're in the program and become seniors, we have them join another branch of my organization called CP Future Action Academy. Action Academy is an internship that is online in the summer for seniors and college students that teaches civic engagement, and we pay them. When they go through this and they learn this history and civic engagement, then we give them $1,000 stipend at the end of it.
Wow. Wow. I have a question. Do you ever sleep?
According to my husband, I do not many hours.
I don't see other questions in the chat, but maybe somebody wants to put up their hand, or let's see. I know there may be some follow-up questions to the information you've just given us. Or Sharon, you may have some additional questions.
I see one that just popped up. Catherine.
yes.
Kathleen.
Yeah. What do you see as the modern day lynching issue of today?
The fact that, and I mentioned this friend of you who were there 2 weeks ago, the fact that lynching still exists, that we often think of it as some relic from a Jim Crow past. And in fact, if you look at the definition of what has historically qualified as a lynching, something that is done in service in the lyncher's mind to race, community, or justice, 3 or more people, outside of the exigencies of the law without a fear of prosecution, and a person is murdered from it. We have a whole lot of these murders today, like Ahmaud Arbery and George Floyd and others, that qualify, not adjacent to, but qualify as lynchings. And so that, I think, is the issue. What has become one of the remedies for that, many of the remedies, one of them is the public nature of people recording these things. We would have never had a conviction in either Ahmaud Arbery nor in George Floyd's murders had there not been recordings of what happened. The other thing is really to cut it off before it happens, which is why education, I believe in the power of education, of the work that you all are doing, of the work of opening people's hearts and minds to the beauty of diversity, to honoring difference. That goes quite a long way in stymieing racism, in stymieing structural inequality, not just the person who's learning it if they have it, but what it does is when we learn this, it empowers us to disrupt it, right? When we see it. And so I believe very much in the power of education to end racism and racial inequality.
I'll just make a quick comment. I was at an event this morning that Tara was also at, so she may want to add comments to this. We had the privilege of meeting the soloist for the Annapolis Symphony for this weekend, who is the most impressive pianist. He happens to be Black, and the maestro who was there asked him if he felt there was still discrimination in the music world. And he had a very interesting answer, which I'll just say briefly. He has unfortunately been the victim of being stopped and having undeserved arrests, etc. And he said he doesn't see that has really lessened. But what he does see is that there's more awareness of it now in the country, and that while police are not held as accountable as they should be, could be, etc., there at least is talk about how the police are handling these situations, and he sees that as progress. So
absolutely. Yeah,
I just wanted to mention that to you.
Yeah, yesterday, I mean, if you all followed that, what they called the Goon Squad, a group of police officers in Mississippi who tortured 2 Black men, were sentenced to many, many years in prison. That's something that would not have happened in 1960 or 1950. So, right, there is progress. There's a different moral paradigm under which we function more broadly now, where we understand, more that, no, this is that we're going to disrupt this kind of thing. Absolutely. I see a question that came in the chat about.
Yeah, you see it too.
Yeah, about affirmative action.
Yeah.
So we know, well, I mean, those attacks that we see on DEI, on affirmative action, they are nothing more to me than the attempts to codify white supremacy, period. We saw people getting fired from organizations for who is opposed to promoting diversity, equity, and inclusion unless you are an individual who prefers to have a standard that is one that functions under whiteness and white supremacy. So there is that, and I think I'm preaching to the choir in this group on understanding that. In terms of the affirmative action ruling, the thing that I think becomes most disturbing to me is this assumption, and even with the DEI, that folks who have been granted an opportunity somehow don't qualify. Folks who have been granted and opened a door for an opportunity often are more qualified than their white counterparts because they have to be. They have to have gone to the better school. They have to have had more accomplishments. They have to have been more impressive just to be perceived as baseline acceptable for what they can do. Some schools, different schools are responding to it differently. My daughter's at NYU, and the president said that we value diversity. And they said that they will ensure that they have a population because that diversity, which doesn't just include race, but includes gender, is valuable to all people. Everybody learns from everybody else. And somehow those who are so opposed to DEI and affirmative action don't see legacy grants and those types of things in the same vein, even though legacy admissions are sometimes even worse because you could very well have somebody who is not qualified like USC, but somebody either is a legacy or their parents paid for them to get in. So there are attacks on things that are so racialized and see-through, but that also goes back to the vote because it is governors and state legislators who are legalizing DEI. We vote them out and vote others in. And so that's why when I came to this organization, it was with an understanding that everything relates back. Many things, most things relate back to the vote and our political power.
You're here.
Okay, so I see that it is 4:32, and I know you have to move on. We are so appreciative that you spent time with us this afternoon, Dr. Terry, and we'll be in touch.
Definitely. Thank you so much for having me. I hope to see you all at future things.
Thank
You will,
you.
and thank you for your good work.
Thank you. Thank you all for your good work. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Well, that was terrific.
Yes, she is just a dynamo, and I am like so excited that she's, she lives right in Frederick, so she's very accessible to us. And it would be so easy for our students to go up there and participate in Scholars in Motion with her. And I, as some of you were asking the question, I have some in mind that I want to connect up with her already. So I did want to go on with a few other things this afternoon. First of all, I want to ask all of you if anybody has been doing any study there on their own or any presentations or reading that you want to share with the group while we're together. I know I was able to jump in and watch the virtual presentation of the historic Annapolis on the 19th century sites of the enslaved here in Maryland. And that was quite interesting. And what I love about the historic Annapolis presentations, if you can't watch it at 7 o'clock on a Tuesday evening, they will send you, the recording and you can watch it later. So keep that in mind if you see something that catches your eye.
Betsy, did you want to still keep recording or do you want to go off record?
We can go off record. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you, Susan.